My name is Claire Thompson. I'm 39 years old and live in a small town near Asheville, North Carolina. My life used to look like a perfect picture to outsiders. A cozy wooden house nestled in the pines, a well-behaved son, and a husband with a stable job in international logistics. But the truth is, that picture was painted with my patience, with the constant whisper, "It'll get better," for 15 years. My husband, Richard, is 42 and works for a global shipping company. His job has kept him away from home for most of our marriage. When Nathan, our son, was 5, Richard started taking long business trips. At first, it was a few weeks, then a few months. Now it's nearly all year round except for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and his mother's death anniversary. I don't blame him for that. Really. I understand financial pressure. I understand duty to a company. What I didn't expect was how his absence became routine, and so did the silence between us. I gave up my career in interior design after Nathan was born. We agreed I'd stay home to raise him. And I did. Completely. Every meal, every parent-teacher conference, every fever at 2 a.m, I handled it all. In the beginning, Richard used to say things like, "You're amazing," and "I'm lucky to have you," but in the past few years those words disappeared, replaced by short texts like, "In a meeting," or "Don't call now." I went back to work 2 years ago, not because we needed the money, but because I needed to breathe. I started teaching floral design at a community center 10 minutes from home, just a few classes a week, but it reminded me I existed outside of being a wife and mother. And I started writing. At first, it was just journal entries, short posts on an anonymous blog. But over time, I got swept into the world of a character I created. A woman quietly fighting against lies no one believed could be exposed. I used the pen name Elsie Monroe. No one, not even Richard, knew it was me. My debut novel, posted on a small writing forum, had over 100,000 followers. I didn't tell anyone because I thought, this is just for me. Nathan is 16 now. My son is more thoughtful than his quiet nature lets on. He rarely asks about his father, but I know he notices. Once, I caught him standing in front of our wedding photo, staring at it for a long time. When I asked, he simply said, "It's weird. Dad's never around, but he's in every photo." I said nothing. I didn't know how to explain it in a way that felt honest. Every time Richard came home, it felt like a rehearsed play. He brought gifts, asked a few polite questions like, "Is everything okay?" Stayed for a few meals, then left again with promises of more time soon. And I, foolish, nodded like a clock wound too tight. Our marriage wasn't passionate, but it wasn't explosive either. It felt like a glass of water left sitting too long, clear but tasteless. Still, I kept thinking, for our son, for the family, for a real home, people get tired. But they come back if love remains, right? I believed that, until one April afternoon, Richard called me on video, his first contact in nearly 2 weeks. I smiled when his face appeared on screen, but he didn't smile back. He said 5 words, his voice calm enough to chill. "Claire, we should get divorced." I sat still. For a second, it felt like a line from a novel I hadn't written. But it wasn't fiction this time, it was real. I stared at the screen as the call ended. His words echoed in my head like a hammer striking hollow metal. "Claire, we should get divorced." No tears, no screaming, just a strange emptiness growing slowly in my chest. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrived by express mail. Sender, R. Thompson, listed from an office in Chicago. Inside were neatly printed documents marked in yellow. Divorce papers, financial terms, a proposed asset division, and a small handwritten note. "Thank you for everything. I believe we both deserve a new life. Back home before fall, so please prepare to move." I stood at the window, the note trembling in my hand. Move? He actually wrote, "Move?" No apology, no explanation. When I called back, Richard answered after 6 rings. His voice was tired but firm. "I don't want this to get messy, Claire. So you think sending divorce papers and telling me to leave the house is what, polite? We've been living apart for too long. I'm in Chicago, you're in North Carolina. That's not a marriage anymore. But that was your choice, Richard. I never agreed to live like this. I stayed for Nathan, for your parents, for this house. He paused for a moment, then said flatly, "Just go over the paperwork. I'll support Nathan until he turns 18. I'll cover moving costs if needed." I laughed, a dry, bitter laugh with no joy. 18? Nathan just started 10th grade. That's 3 more years. You think it's that simple? Claire, I'm not trying to fight for custody. He should be with you. I'll send money each month. That's the best I can do. I gripped the phone tightly. In the house? It's under my father's name. After he passed, it transferred to me. You have no legal right to keep it. It's Thompson family property. That last sentence cut straight through me like a blade. After all the years here, caring for every brick, every garden bed, I was just a tenant? When Nathan got home that night, I didn't say a word. I made burgers like usual, asked about his study group, pretended nothing had changed. But inside, I was already planning. 3 days later, I called Richard again. "I'm not signing." "Claire, you're making this harder than it needs to be." "No, I'm being a mother, and I'm doing what's right. If you want my signature, we renegotiate. I want your legal commitment to support Nathan through college, not just until 18. You can't demand that. I have no legal obligation. But you have a moral one, Richard. And if you don't agree, my attorney will take it up with family court." He didn't say a word, just ended the call. I knew Richard always hated drama. That hard-working, private, responsible man image was everything to him. He wanted the divorce to be quiet, quick. But I wasn't a shadow anymore. Not the keeper of the home, waiting patiently for him to show up on holidays. I flipped through the documents he sent. The asset list mentioned relocation support, but nothing about the 15 years I sacrificed. No acknowledgement for giving up my career to raise Nathan, for caring for his parents during their illnesses, or for holding this entire household together. A few days later, I received a text. "If you keep dragging this out, I won't pay a dime after the divorce. Think carefully." I replied with just one line. "Then I'll see you in court." I turned off my phone, opened my laptop, and began drafting a formal response. My story was far from over. The more Richard pushed, the quieter I became. He kept messaging, reminding me to sign the divorce papers before August. His reason? Wanting to wrap things up cleanly before heading back to the Chicago office. Sounded reasonable, but a creeping unease settled in me. A man who always avoided responsibility? Why was he suddenly in such a hurry to finalize a divorce? One night, after Nathan went to bed early, I sat in front of my laptop and pulled up Richard's old work emails. One detail caught my eye. For the past 6 months, his emails hadn't come from Chicago, but from an IP address in Peoria, nearly a 3-hour drive away. A quiet, small town. Perfect for hiding something. I hired an online private investigation service. Not the spy movie kind, just a middle-aged woman named Linda who used to work in divorce asset tracing. I sent her the temporary office address Richard had mentioned, his travel schedule, and a few personal details. Linda told me to give her 3 days. On the 4th day, I received a photo. In it, Richard stood in front of a sloped-roofed suburban home, holding a grocery bag. Beside him was a young woman, early 30s, blonde waves, smiling. A little boy, maybe 6 years old, held her hand with a popsicle in his mouth, looking at Richard like he was his father. Behind them was a gray pickup truck, same one Richard had told me he sold last year. I felt the blood drain to my feet. Not because he cheated, because he had been living another life while still calling me his wife. Still sending birthday gifts to Nathan. Linda confirmed the house belonged to a woman named Jenna Malone, currently a dental assistant in the city. The boy was Liam Malone, but there was no father listed on the birth certificate. Richard had rented a separate, smaller apartment nearby to use as his official residence, in case his company ever checked in. He'd built 2 lives, one to live in, one to cover up. I sat in the dark for a long time after reading the report. The betrayal wasn't the hardest part anymore. What kept me awake was the sheer audacity. He had a child, a family, and he was pushing me and Nathan out to make it official before the school year started. He didn't just want a divorce. He wanted to erase me so he could bring his other child into this home. So I did what I do best, I wrote. I drafted an email to Richard, attached 2 photos, wrote a short message. If you want my signature, be ready to cover Nathan's full college tuition, attorney fees, and moving costs, otherwise I'll be happy to present all evidence in court. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Claire, I can explain. I've had enough of half-truths. Say it clearly, and own it. You're blowing this out of proportion. Jenna is just... Don't lie again. That boy is your son, isn't he? Silence. On the other end, only heavy breathing. I continued slowly. You have the right to live your life, but no one has the right to trample over others to build a new one. You will not leave Nathan without a home, and I will not be thrown out like a stranger. He cut the call without another word. 3 hours later, I received a short email. We need to talk. I'll come by this weekend. I looked at those words and thought, now it truly begins. Richard showed up as promised. On a hot Sunday afternoon, he stood at the door in a pressed dress shirt, carrying no luggage, his face blank. I didn't invite him in, but he walked through the doorway anyway, as if he still owned the place. What do you want to sign the papers? He asked bluntly, standing in the living room. You're in such a rush because the kid needs to enroll in school, right? I asked, looking him dead in the eye. His expression faltered. He didn't deny it, he didn't explain. He turned instead to the shelf. At our 2004 wedding photo. Claire, I don't want to make this difficult. Just sign and I'll leave enough assets for you and Nathan to live comfortably. Thanks, but I don't need you to leave behind anything. I just want the truth to stand in the right place. I pulled a stack of documents from the drawer and placed them on the oak coffee table. Richard stared at it like it was a ticking bomb. What is that? Legal documents, including an updated deed to this house, a preliminary will from Harold Thompson, your father, and an adoption certificate. Adoption? Richard stepped back. I continued calmly. Last year, after your father had his second stroke, I was the one who took him to therapy every week. You didn't even answer his calls once during those 3 months. Richard's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. During that time, he rewrote his will. Fearing you'd try to manipulate things after his death, he had me legally adopted. This house is now under my name, granted as a living gift per his estate planning terms. I slid a certified copy in front of him. Richard grabbed it, eyes scanning each line, a vein twitching on his forehead. This is forged. Feel free to take it to court. His attorney has verified everything and I have the notarized original. If needed, the court can contact him. He's still sharp and ready to testify. Richard dropped onto the couch like the air had been sucked from his lungs. I didn't stop. As for the inheritance, after you announced the divorce, your father filed a formal petition to revoke your inheritance rights. Under North Carolina law, if approved, the remaining estate will pass directly to Nathan, his biological grandson, under intestate succession. He can't do that. He can. And he already did. His reason? My only son knowingly hid a child born out of wedlock, lived a double life, and discarded his original family like worn-out furniture. I made sure to say each word slowly, clearly, like hammering away at the false reality Richard had built for years. He bowed his head, hands clasped, chest rising unevenly. A moment later he looked up, voice hoarse. So what now? You're kicking me out? No. I'm letting you walk out once you realize there's not a single brick left under your feet. I stood and walked toward the door. This house belongs to me and Nathan. We're not going anywhere. You better find a new apartment for your child before the school year starts. Richard rose slowly. Not a word. Just as his hand touched the doorknob, I spoke again. Oh, and one more thing. If you plan on avoiding child support for Nathan, don't worry. I'll bring all of this to the family court, and if necessary, I'll make it public. Every detail, including how you maintain dual residences during work trips. He froze. Turned around, eyes wide. You wouldn't dare. Try me. A calm expression crossed my face, not out of spite, but from the quiet power of knowing I could finally protect myself. Richard left that day, and I knew the board had turned. 3 weeks after Richard moved out, a message from Harper Literary, one of the biggest publishing houses on the East Coast, landed in my inbox. The subject line was simple. Congratulations! We are officially acquiring the adaptation rights to Ash Tree Letters for an animated series. My hands trembled slightly as I read it. My debut novel, written under the pen name C.L. Monroe, was becoming a Japanese-American anime series set for global release next spring. No one knew C.L. Monroe was me. For 3 years I had quietly uploaded chapters to an international writing platform, read every line of feedback, edited in silence, and grew alone. I never told Richard. I knew he'd dismiss it as a time-wasting hobby. But now that waste of time had earned a 6-figure licensing deal. More importantly, it brought recognition, confidence, and the proof that I was never the dependent one they imagined. On contract signing day, I brought Nathan with me. My son wore a crisp white shirt, hair neatly styled, his eyes glowing with pride. After leaving Harper's headquarters, we stopped at a little diner near the central station for dinner. As the main course was served, Nathan looked at me for a long moment and asked, "Are you gonna tell Dad?" I set my glass down, paused. "Not yet, but I think it's time." The opportunity came sooner than I thought. A week later, Richard called, the first time in over a month. His voice was no longer sharp, just low, uncertain. "Claire, I heard about Dad." Nathan spoke with him. "I didn't expect things to go this far. You should have called him sooner, not for the house, but because you're his son. But it's too late now." Silence. Then he spoke again, like he was trying to reach for something long gone. "Claire, I know I messed up, but I also know you're not just someone who stays in the kitchen like I used to think. You've always had something more. I see it in Nathan's eyes, how proud he is of you." I let out a soft laugh. "I've always been me. You just never looked closely enough." I paused, then said firmly, "I'm C.L.M. Monroe." Beat of silence, then from the other end. "What?" "The author of Ash Tree Letters, the one you asked Nathan about the other day." "Who writes women that ridiculous?" "Claire, no way." "Why not?" "Because I was your wife for 15 years and in your eyes I was just a housewife who cooked, cleaned, and fulfilled her role?" I stopped. My tone was calm but steady. "I've spent the last 2 years studying family law, property rights, and civil law. Not to fight anyone, but to fully understand what I have the right to protect." "You studied for this?" For the first time, Richard's voice actually shook. "I studied so I wouldn't be a victim the day betrayal came. The divorce papers are signed, all financial terms are finalized, the assets are certified, and the entire income from the upcoming adaptations has nothing to do with you." I cut him off. "If you're calling to claim a share, don't. If you're calling to apologize, I acknowledge it, but if you're calling to come back, it's too late." Silence on the other end. I said softly, "Some things don't break from impact. They fall apart because they've been neglected for too long." That night, while Nathan was rereading the draft of my next novel, he said, "You know what? Dad told me you're a dangerous woman because you stay quiet and still leave people with no way out." I held his gaze, steady and calm. "If that's what your father thinks, then there's no need to correct him." From that moment on, I stopped fearing abandonment. I had learned how to stand on my own, through knowledge, calm strength, and the very chapters I wrote with my own hands. 2 months after Richard stepped away from our last call, I received a strange email from an address ending in @gtrlogistics.com, his workplace for over a decade. It was from Marcia Fuller, the regional HR director. The message was brief and cold. "We confirm that Mr. Richard Thompson has been officially transferred to the branch office in Rapid City, South Dakota, with a downgraded role to Tier 3. If there are any ongoing legal matters between you and Mr. Thompson, please submit all documentation to our legal department for processing, under labor compliant." I wasn't surprised, I just didn't expect things to move that fast. Through a few contacts I still had, including a former colleague of Richard's who kept in touch because she admired Mrs. Monroe's novels, I learned what had happened. After Richard pushed me to sign the divorce papers and failed, Jenna, his mistress, called his office herself, asking to verify paperwork for residency sponsorship for her and her son. That call was recorded. A few days later, an internal report was filed. Richard was cited for violating the company's ethics policy, using business travel to maintain a double life, and using his corporate housing to conceal an undeclared personal relationship. There was no termination, but the demotion, relocation, and loss of all privileges were enough to permanently erase a rising candidate from senior management's radar. I heard Jenna couldn't handle the harsher pace of life in that small city. Her son, Liam, frequently missed school due to trouble adjusting to the new environment, according to a post she quietly shared in a single-mother parenting group. Richard, once the confident man in a dark suit and Swiss watch, was now a temporary logistics analyst working in a windowless room sharing a parking lot with 7 other employees. It didn't feel triumphant, but I didn't feel sorry either. One late autumn afternoon, I received a package by express mail. No sender name. Inside was an envelope containing a bank check for $85,000 and a handwritten note that read, in stiff print, "Alimony. Don't contact me again." I laughed. A man who once thought he was clever enough to outsmart family, the law, and ethics, now had to pay to be forgotten. But the scariest thing isn't losing money, it's losing trust. I used that money to do the only thing I believed was right. I founded a scholarship named after my former mother-in-law, Evelyn Thompson, the woman who once called me the daughter I always wished I had. The scholarship is for high school girls in the state who want to study literature, education, or law. The 3 things that saved me from years of living like a shadow. As for Jenna, word has it that after growing increasingly frustrated with Richard, she started live streaming craft sales online, occasionally venting about men who say they love you but never take responsibility. When a viewer commented, "Are you sure you chose the right man?" she immediately blocked them. I have no opinion. Everyone lives with the consequences of their choices. And Jenna chose a man who once abandoned his family without hesitation. That alone says enough. Nathan is now a first-year communications major. My son has never asked about what happened between me and his father, but on his 17th birthday, when I handed him a signed copy of my book from the publisher, he simply said, "Thanks, Mom, for not giving up. Life never goes back to what it was, but it can begin a new version, if you're brave enough to end the old one properly." I'm no longer the Claire who lived in waiting. I'm a mother, a writer, and the only person who gets to define who I am. 1 year after signing the divorce papers, I stood on the 3rd-floor balcony of a historic building in Asheville's Arts District, holding a warm cup of coffee, watching people bustle below through the fiery colors of fall. This apartment isn't much bigger than our old house, but it breathes freedom. No more cold suitcases showing up on holidays, no more silent meals heavy with unspoken things. Just me, Nathan, and our own space, where everything is real, nothing is hidden or forced. After the Ash Tree Letters anime series premiered, feedback from both the US and Japan exceeded expectations. International translation rights were quickly purchased. The main character, a woman who quietly turned her life around, became a symbol shared by thousands of readers across online forums. I never appeared publicly, no press conferences, no book signings. Every interview was written through a representative. I kept the pen name C.L. Monroe as a way to separate my career from my private life, and to let Claire Thompson live fully without spotlights or judgment. With steady income from licensing and adaptation deals, I no longer worry about end-of-month bills, but what fulfills me most is being able to write every day. Not in secret, not waiting until everyone is asleep. Nathan is now a freshman in digital media at the University of North Carolina. He lives in the dorms and comes home only on weekends, but every time he walks in, he greets me with the biggest smile, hugs me for a long moment, and only then drops his backpack. Once I joked, Life must be fun if you come home smiling like you just won the lottery." Nathan answered dryly, "It's because here, I don't have to explain who I am." I didn't reply, but my heart, which once shrank from too many disappointments, has now learned to warm up in quiet, gentle ways. On a rainy night with wind rattling the window pane, I sat at my laptop and opened a blank document for a new project. This time, the main character is a 39-year-old woman living in a small town who loves her son, loves floral design, and was once deeply betrayed. But she doesn't fall, She turns pain into prose, silence into strength, and walks out of abandonment on her own 2 feet. I didn't name her right away. I let her walk, speak, breathe, and rediscover herself. Just like I once did. Maybe this time, I won't use a pen name. Maybe. Or maybe I still will, because I want the world to know only the story, not the woman behind it. One day I received an unmarked envelope. Inside was an old photo. Me, Richard, and Nathan standing in front of our old house on some past Thanksgiving. On the back, a few shaky words were written. If I could do it again, I wish I'd been different. I folded the photo, placed it in the bottom drawer, and closed it. Not to forget, but to never repeat. Nathan and I continue to live in peace. No drama, no need to win, just the freedom to be ourselves and to see each other clearly without distortion. In the end, I realized, freedom isn't about walking away. It's about having the courage to stay with yourself after everything else has fallen apart. My story isn't just about leaving a broken marriage. It's about returning to who I truly am. I was once dismissed as just a stay-at-home mom, overlooked, betrayed. But I didn't fall. I stood up, learned how to protect my son, my assets, and rewrote my life, one word at a time. Today I live freely, happily, and strong enough not to need anyone else to define my worth. And I believe anyone can do the same. What do you think about Claire's choices and the ending Richard faced? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt and powerful stories about life, family, and resilience.